This is ComebaCK. This is interview 3 in the series. I'm today talking to Matt Burke. Matt is the host of the Magic Minds podcast. His book, From My Head to My Heart, is available now. He interviews people with stories that inspire. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm absolutely fantastic, Connor. Thanks very much for inviting me onto your show. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for plugging my book. You're a good lad.
Yeah, no problem. I'm yet to obviously get it. Obviously, you've sent it over to Vietnam, and it took a while.
Yeah.
My cousin sent a package over from Ireland as well. It took 6 weeks to come. So we're nearing the stage. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I can imagine it's probably the next week or the one after, but it's coming up, and I'm pretty excited. I want to start with you, Matt, just
Okay.
talking a little bit about your background. How come you started out Magic Minds? What was the inspiration for you to do so?
Well, I suppose I was always been interested in listening to other people's interviews, and I was listening to podcasts at the time, and it was just one of those things, isn't it brilliant? Like, I was watching IFL TV and I was watching other reviews. I says to myself, isn't it deadly that they could sit down and ask these people all these questions? Because I've loads of questions and I've loads of things I want to ask people. And I love people's stories. I love human stories. I like hearing people's journeys, and it all builds up in my mind. And it's just fantastic. And I just said, you know what? Imagine if I had an interview platform for doing interviews. I had a podcast or something like that. I could interview people. So I just started that way. I just bought myself a Zoom H1 and just decided, because I work in the National Rehab as well. And I'm surrounded by amazing people, patients and then staff. So they brilliant stories. The staff are brilliant. They're highly skilled professionals, whether that be in mental health, spinal, nutrition, music. There's all sorts of people here, and then plus the patients with amazing stories. So it's just like a perfect storm, I suppose. I started that, interviewed some of the patients, interviewed other people, and that's really where I went from there. And it's stories that have the power to inspire. Whatever inspires me, I listen and read and look for stories to inspire me, and then just by chance that they may inspire the audience. But I don't set out to do that. My thing is, these guys, these people are specifically people that inspire me. And I just think anyone that I've interviewed are awesome people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned IFL TV. Are there any other blogs, podcasts, shows that kind of really connected with you, really resonated in starting out?
Yeah, I'm huge fan of the likes of Brené Brown, Oprah Winfrey, Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, Jack Cornfield, Ramdat, all these kind of, the Blind Boy, who else? Yeah, I suppose Chris Kresser, health ones. And so I'm interested in strength and conditioning ones. I'm interested in spiritual. I'm interested all the stuff that I'm kind of into now. I still tip away. I listen to, anything between spiritual right through to endurance, strength training, physical. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. One day I listen to spiritual stuff. I maybe listen to Eckhart Tolle, and the next day I could be listening to breath work. I'm exploring the power of breath work and pranayama yoga at the moment. I'm finishing a pranayama online course, and then I'm going to do a breath work course. And I just look. My background is sports science and health, so I'm hugely interested with the link between the spiritual, the physical, the science. We for years I was a crazy atheist. Like, I didn't believe in anything other than carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen. It's all science. I wouldn't be having a bar of God. Like, I was even on a sports science course back in 2010 when I did my degree. And I was arguing with the course coordinator. I was arguing with the head of the science department. Like, what the fuck is, like, you have some dude in there talking about chi and like Reiki healing. I'm here to learn science. I want to know about research papers. I want to know now at the moment, Connor. Right, I'm going around. I'm starting a Reiki healing course in the end of February, baby. And I'm crazy into spirituality. I'm crazy into angels cards and tarot and oracles. And in 2010, I was going around saying there was no such a thing as Jesus, and it was all made up like Father Christmas.
It's mad how our perceptions change. We can. That's why I think it's important to be open-minded, as you were saying, where you can listen to something that initially you'll have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, you'll think, oh, I disagree with that. Obviously, I would say I'm interested in science, religion's pile of rubbish, etc. But then once you open your mind to it, you think, hang on, there's something to this. There is something to the spiritual related to the physical as well. I always used to think that, you know, if you were just physically fit, that was enough, when in reality, you have to be right upstairs. Otherwise, you're not going to fire on all cylinders in any way, shape, or form. It always shocks me that every single person that we know will go to see a doctor for a physical illness. Absolutely, no question. Yet when it comes to the mental, and you go to see somebody for your mental well-being, there seems to still be this idea of, oh, why would you do that? I think it is improving, but it does fascinate me that despite the mind being so much more complex than the body, we still don't recognize its importance.
I heard a great one there today. It was a quote by this guy Brian McKenzie. He does the art of breath work, and does all this kind of. I can't tell you what his title is, but he was on a podcast I was listening to. It was just the how to breathe correctly, or how to breathe properly, and he says the mind controls the body, but the breath controls the mind. And I was like, wow. And I've been embarking on, over the last 3 days, I'm trying to change my heart rate variability. I'm interested in heart rate variability. So over the last 3 days, I've been just nasal breathing day and night, keep my mouth closed, breathing through my night, only when I talk. And I have changed my heart rate variability. I've raised it. I brought down my asympathetic, my sympathetic nervous system, and increased my parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is rest, digest, peace, calm, where the other one's fight, flight, freeze. So by just controlling your breath, you're changing your nervous system. That's science, but that's also ingrained in all the yoga practice. Like these been going on for 5,000 years. There was a science behind it, but they obviously weren't talking about research papers back there. But so we can control our mind, our nervous system, by just controlling the mechanics of our breath. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's astonishing, because obviously that's the thing that you take for granted, you know, breathing. Of course, I almost for years just thought, well, that's just what you do. That's just how you stay alive. You breathe, and there's almost nothing to do with that. But when you actually look into it, I interviewed a guy on my blog, Alan Dolan. Are you familiar with him?
No, no.
Okay, he's a breathwork practitioner as well. Very fascinating guy. I'd recommend you kind of check out his stuff. But yeah, he kind of really delved into how changing the way you breathe, which seems very simple, can make this profound effect. He described it as seeing the world in 3D, literally being completely have a nihilistic, hopeless view of the world. And suddenly, just by changing the way he was to breathe for 12 weeks, he suddenly realized there was so many possibilities to life. He almost saw the world differently, which is astonishing, because it's such a, you know, almost a banal concept, but
yeah, it's an involuntary thing. Like when you study anatomy and physiology, you're told in school that, in the school of thought, that you know, your breath, your heartbeat, pulse, they are all just involuntary. They happen.
Yeah, precisely.
Anyway, but you can change them. Like I was just talking to some of the patients at the hospital. Like if you want to improve a health marker, let's say your resting heart rate, you know, you wake up in the morning, you take your pulse, and it's 67 beats or 70 beats. You can change that by changing how you breathe, by you literally closing your mouth, breathing through your nose. The mechanics of your breath, your lungs, the alveoli, it all slows down. And that in itself slows down the heart rate. So already you've improved the health marker by just closing your mouth and being efficient with your breath, breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your nose, and already you've improved a health marker. And then the follow-on results of that is then your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, because you're not taking big gulps of air, which triggers the sympathetic nervous system. You're slowly breathing, so it's all parasympathetic. So straight away when you close your mouth, you're just feeling relaxed and calm. It's just phenomenal. I'm like, how did I've studied science for years and blah blah, and I read a book in 2016 called The Oxygen Advantage by a guy called Peter McCone.
Okay.
And it's brilliant. And I only just dug it out the other day on Sunday or Saturday. I was like, wow, I had this gem sitting here that I had forgot all about. But you know what, Connor, I just wasn't ready for it back then. You know, I was too busy trying to fix some other thing. So
if we go back to kind of back then, or at previous points in your life then, what are your own experiences with mental health? Have you had any difficulties with your mental health? And if so, How long have they lasted?
So yeah, and I talk about this in the book, Connor. Uh, Up till 2010, 11, I would have told you, no, I'm grand, nothing wrong with me. I'm just, yeah, sometimes I get a little bit stressed sometimes, but the wheels off the cart started to come off when I lost my. I had a big drink and drug issue. I never realised that I was drinking from when I was about 12, taking drugs from when I was about 12,
Right. Okay.
right up to 2009, 10, and then obviously I returned back to education in 2007. Went back and I done a personal training course, leisure management. Then I went on and done my science degree. So you can't do those things and be participating in the lifestyle. I was selling drugs and I was a drug dealer, blah, blah, blah. And you can't do those things. So I made a decision back then that I'm going to cut all that out of my life. I'm going to dive into education. But little did I know, Connor, that drink, drugs is a crutch and it keeps you protected. So then when I took those things away, I started to see the cracks, and then 2011, 12, my mental health, 3, 4, 5 things started happening, relationship problems. I had English bulldogs that were over in England. They were getting bread from me like they were pupping. And I hadn't got papers over here because I was doing a bit of a dodgy deal. They thought I was doing a dodgy deal. There was loads of things.
Right.
I was working the door as a security man, and it all started falling apart. And I didn't know what to do. And I was on my way to England with a pal of mine to collect the dogs, 7 bulldog pups. And I wanted to take my life by suicide. I wanted it to end. I wanted it to die. Well, I thought I did, but my mate said to me on the boat, you don't want to die. You just want the pain to stop. And it was one of those aha moments. I was like, fuck, yeah, that's it. All these years, I didn't know that this was the pain I was going through. And yeah, it was such a aha moment. And then he says, you jump off this boat, you might not die. That fucking water's cold. And I obviously am a bit of a princess, so I didn't want to be getting into cold water, So, and that was then, he says, like, you mightn't die, but you'd be fucking freezing. So I embarked on, going to counselling, and that's where the work started. That's really where, I started exploring why I was having mental health difficulties, what they were, huge anxiety, huge fear, huge insecurity, huge not rate myself, that really low esteem. But it was all bravado, and I was big back then. I was taking lots of steroids, all these kind of things, pre 2010, I was always trying to build up this perfection, to always build up, and I really boisterous, and I was really gobby, and I was always cracking jokes. It was all a facade. I was hiding behind.
Yeah.
I was really what it was, Connor, was a scared little boy. I was just, as I talk in my book and I talk about in life, my little self, I was just, I was just this little boy that just didn't know how to mind himself. And that's where the work really started. That's where the excavation and going deep, if you want to build a big, tall building, you have to go deep and wide.
Yeah, sure.
And
Yeah, I see. So what are kind of the main things that you learn about yourself from this practice? So say after 2010, when you go into counselling and you go into really working on yourself and making the comeback, as we like to talk about on the blog, what were the things that you kind of really found out and thought, right, okay, this is what's going to get me to this next point?
Well, I started engaging in counselling. So just understanding, like, just to first of all talk about the stuff that was going on. So along with that, then I started reading loads more, reading about mental health, reading about awareness, reading about consciousness. So along with the psychological stuff, I started listening to the spiritual stuff. I started listening to Eckhart Tolle, becoming the watcher of my thoughts, becoming the watcher of my mind, becoming aware that I was not my mind. I was a separate, like, I couldn't get my head around the fact that I and the thinker are separate. The mind and the soul are different, and there was a separation between the body. I was like, this is phenomenal. Split seconds, and then I'd be immersed back in it. In the counsel session, I'd get light bulb moments, epiphanies, and blah blah. Then I come out, puff, I'm back to square one.
Yeah.
And it was a long, arduous journey. But I just had to keep dipping out of counselling, reading, excessive reading of psychological, spiritual texts, and all these kind of, then the podcast, starting the podcast, doing holotropic breath work. I was just tipping away at everything, Connor, and I was training because I was always body, body, body. But then I started understanding the power of the mind, the power of the spirit, the power of the body, and they're all interconnected. And that's really so there's no one thing. There's you need to get many ducks in a row in order to, first of all, I have to identify what were the barriers, what were the things that were tripping me up. Okay, it was a childhood trauma. I was sexually abused as a child.
Okay.
I experienced lots of violence as a child. And when I say violence, I mean violence and roar and shout and threatening, blah. And I grew up in a hostile environment. So I never thought that they had a part in why I drank at the age of 12.
Yeah.
I never knew that sure we all did that. Everyone does that. What I realized, so many people have traumas. So many people use things, drink drugs to avoid. I didn't know I was avoiding, but then I became aware of it, and it's an amazing journey, difficult as fuck, but beautiful as well. Beautiful, it just really makes you understand human beings as well. That's the one thing I get it, and that's where I do the job I do in the hospital. I understand trauma, I understand pain, because I have experienced it, and it gives you the ability, Connor, to connect with people. I can see people for what they are.
Yeah, and have empathy for what they're going through.
Yeah.
I might coming out the other side of that. Obviously, that's quite a lot to face from a young age, say before the age of 12, especially. So to then realize that, do the work that you've done and come back from it, is a very commendable kind of feat. If you don't mind, can I ask you a bit about the drink and the drugs? Because I'm kind of like every kind of young person, I've kind of dabbled in both myself, and occasionally I think, oh, okay, this isn't always the answer. How tricky were those two things in particular to give up? Because they are very addictive substances. Hence why so many people have issues with them.
Yeah, I didn't. See, this is the thing, Connor. I didn't give them up. I didn't go one day, I'm stopping doing this. So what happened in 2008? I was working on the doors. I got a letter from the social welfare said, look, you got to get a job or you got to get trained. I went to this dude and he was like, look, they want you to get off the labour. Do you want to go off to the social welfare? You got to get a course, something. I was like, what do I do? And he's like, oh, there's a fitness course. You look like you do a bit of training. I was like, I've no leaving cert. I've no education. Failed on my leaving cert. But anyway, he got me onto this course. Your woman says, yeah, I think you'd be good at this. And I'm like, yeah, what the fuck do you know? Because I was really I didn't trust anybody back then.
Yeah, I see.
And I got on it. And then the first week they made me class rep. They made me the class rep. I was like, oh, fucking hell, this is gas. So, you know what? And I was like, you know what? I've got a choice here. And I remember this friend of mine always saying, once a drug dealer, always a drug dealer. And I was like, no, this is only going to be short term. I always believed, even when I'd done the door work, I'm going somewhere. I've got something to do. I've got stuff to go to in life. I'm going to achieve something. And I said, you know what? I threw away my dodgy phone. I threw away all my dodgy numbers. And I'm going to just get into this education. So I stopped really going out as much. But I dipped in and out, I got a handle on the education. I was like, I can do this. Then I was dipping back in, having a few drinks. Then I was like, oh, I'm in Shitville, Arizona again. So it was this up and down, dipping in and out. There was never a clear break on, right, I'm never touching that again. I actually didn't think I had a drink or drug problem. I just thought I was like everyone else.
Yeah,
but looking back, if you ask me now, I'd look back and went, you had a fucking serious drink and drug problem.
Yeah.
Real serious. And here's the gas thing, Connor, right? People now, friends of mine say, oh, you're really deep, and you're like, are you okay? And you're always having little coins, are you okay? When I wasn't working, Connor, 2007, 2008, I was sitting in the pub on a Tuesday morning, Monday morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock, before the pubs out, they let you in. I was ordering bags of Coke. I was going miss my days. Nobody asked me back then, was I all right? Are you okay? How is everything going for you? No one gave a rat's. I was just a number, just like everyone else. But when you stop drinking and stop partying and you start doing other stuff outside the norm, people are like, are you all right? I remember someone stopped me one day going, are you all right? I see stuff on Facebook and stuff like that. You're not going to do that to yourself. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, your posts are real deep and all. like, it sounds like someone's going to kill them. Are you going to kill yourself? And I said, no, it's just a podcast. I'm promoting love, kindness, blah, blah. Are you sure? Because I know someone that committed suicide and they started off with shit like that. And I'm like, I promise you, I'm not there anymore. But, you know,
Yeah.
outside the norm of drink, drugs. So it was only into the last couple of years kind of that really, I've no place for drink in my life. Drug stopped years and years and years ago. But drink, I just used to tipple away, have the odd point. Now it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
It means if I do this, I can't do this. You know, if I do drink, I won't meditate the next day. I won't train the next day. I won't be inspired to make a podcast video, blah, blah, blah. So it's either few points or just save your energy to go training and eat properly. And so, yeah, it's a trade-off. It's bang for buck, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. I still can't believe almost how glamorized that lifestyle is. Like, I find that story fascinating. How, you know, when you're at that point where you're in the pub early doors, you're kind of living this wild lifestyle. Nobody gives a rat's ass. But then when you start going out to better yourself and kind of doing slightly unconventional things, maybe people are then thinking, "Oh, this is bizarre," and it's maybe because they haven't, as we were talking about earlier, been at that point where they realize the issues that are going on. For example, you said for years that you weren't aware of kind of the past traumas. Maybe these people still aren't aware of their own. So therefore they'll look at somebody like yourself looking to better themselves and think, that's a bit odd. I feel like as a society we do that. If it's not the kind of party lifestyle throughout the week, people think, what's he doing? They'll be kind of confused.
100%. Well, two things happen. What to do and get the head around it doesn't make sense. Or two, it reflects back something into them that they are not doing things right. They see your way as probably the right thing to do, and they are not doing it. Like when you lose weight, or people are losing weight, and they see someone else say, "Oh, you're too skinny," or "You don't look healthy," blah blah blah. What that's probably mirroring back is that they are not participating in a healthy lifestyle. They're not at the weight that they like to be. So they project their insecurities and they project their view of the world on you, instead of me or you just seeing somebody for what it is, for what they're doing, purely as an individual thing. You know, fair play to you. If that makes you happy and you're not harming anyone, knock yourself out. But what it can do for people, it can stoke up insecurities and their inadequacies. And they're like, oh, you know, so they try put you down or
Yeah.
minimize what you're doing or ostracize you or whatever. And it takes a strong set of values and principles to stick to your guns.
Yeah.
Like when you do this, Connor, you're going to get people, you know, criticizing you or people telling you what to do or blah, 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 blah. But you'll stop and you'll have this inner knowing in you. You know what? I
Yeah.
know why I'm doing this. And that's the main thing. I always knew why I'm doing it. They didn't know that. They didn't know I was abused. They didn't know I was violent. It was violence. I never told anyone that. But I knew my why. But I didn't kind of know back then. But I knew I was trying to do something for something. I had this inner knowing.
Yeah,
But I
sure.
didn't tell anyone about it. Now when I wrote the book and people see, like, Jesus. So my mate's brother said to me one time, I've known you a long time, and it's only since the podcast and the book that I really feel like I know you now,
Yeah.
and it's deadly.
Yeah, you only see
So
a small part of the person's life where you can see the tip of the iceberg and think, oh, they've got everything together, or that, and you think you have no idea of the backstory. There are so many things that you don't know about that makes that person the way they are.
yeah, and that's the thing, Connor, right? What you were just saying, and I love that. I love the what I would call the art of real conversation.
Yeah.
I love hearing the below the surface level, not hi, how are you? How are you getting on? Ah, yeah, grand, grand, grand. Tell us what's going on. Tell us
Yeah,
really what's
exactly.
going on. And
Yeah.
you know, some people just won't go beyond that. Now, I'm great at having superficial conversations, banter, taking the piss out of people, but I can easily, there's a poem in here called Dancing with Complexities. I can go from having a deep, meaningful conversation to standing at the water cooler, taking the piss out of one of the guys or girls in the job, once I'm not hurting them or that like that. But, you know, I can do deep and meaningful, but we can also have the crack. And that's about being human as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that story you've just told where you can be at a water cooler having the crack 1 minute and then talking about, say, breath work or something like that the next. I'm also the same with kind of these deep conversations. It's one reason why I moved to Vietnam, because I thought the amount of people from all sorts of nationalities I'm going to meet here that are going to be able to tell me some stories that I'd never, ever hear back in Manchester. means it's worth just going for. Because I feel like back in Manchester or back in kind of small towns, there's always this vibe that's the same thing. Hey, how was work? How was the football? Did you see United? Oh, they were shit. Yeah, that. And I almost realised that's going to happen day after day after day. And soon it's going to happen year after year. And before I know it, I'm 30 or I'm 40 and, oh, I've lived the same day for 20 odd years. So the point I'm trying to make when I'm coming to this, your story, Ireland, obviously you've grown up in Ireland. Can you tell me more about what attitudes like in Ireland towards mental health, towards spirituality, towards these kind of things? Because to me, based on my experience with Irish people, and I might be slightly stereotyping, it seems that it's always been a bit, I think frowned upon perhaps, where it's, oh, get a real job. Oh, why are you getting involved in that stuff? What, almost when you do something unconventional, it's not quite understood. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think we talked about this before. Like the mental health, disabilities. We're in 2021 now, and we've got all these policies, procedures, PC things to say and do, and we're non-gender, binary, trans. We say all these things, but I don't think we have moved that far along the line that these people are properly treated. They're not given the services. They're not giving the respect and the attention that they need. So, okay, right, take that on board with that. So have we moved along that far? No, not really. Johnny comes in or Mary comes in and says, I want to be like a ballet dancer. I want to be like a drama teacher, blah, blah, blah. It's get a real job, get it, we're even in like people don't want to get things wrong. We're in a really scare mentality. Like people don't want to make it foolish. Like even my parents are growing up, they were like, get an apprenticeship. There was no talk of college. There's no talk of anything about creativity.
Yeah, I see.
Maybe there's a little bit of it. There's a little bit of a change, but still, I wouldn't say a whole lot. There's a bit more, the social media, but then with all the social media, with all this coverage, there comes along an element of, you got to be perfect. So now you definitely don't want to step out the lines of normality because you have to have the right filter, right. I remember taking a picture of a girl one day last week or a couple of months ago, and she was like, oh, hold on. And she was looking for a wall. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, contrast. I want to look at the contrast. I said, I'm just fucking taking a picture. But so this was like a perfection. So now if you go to maybe a job or a family thing, are they going to step outside the norms and risk it, looking stupid, blah, blah, or I don't know. I don't think we've moved all that much. Technology has evolved something phenomenal. It's a monster and it's grown just like pathogens and the coronavirus. But we as a species, as an evolutionary species, psychological species, we haven't evolved that much over these amount of years. We might have all the clever gadgets, but we're still very primitive. Why I've always believed when I left college that a pathogen will outsmart us and wipe us out one time. And, we can see that with the coronavirus, how much that's put a stop to our gallop. Yeah. So technology, pathogens, they've all evolved really, really well. But we and our thinking process, we're still a little bit behind. So, yeah, I think even with mental health, it's still like, I don't mind our neighbor next door being a little bit mad or not being himself or a little bit off the wall, but I don't want it to be in my house. I don't want my kids to, same with racism, same with like, it's okay for the neighbor to go out with, say, be somebody of a different color or someone of a different nature, but I don't want it to be here. Like I don't mind you being gay or your friends being gay, but you don't come home and tell me you're gay. I hear these things banded around, so I don't know, and I don't know if that's just Ireland. I think England as well. I speak to people as well in England, and yeah, it's everyone just wants to be normal. Everyone just, and like, what the fuck is normal? There's no such thing as normal. We're not even alike. No cells are the same. No people are the same. With like normal is crazy in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, normal's going to change as well, because say what was normal 100 years ago, for example, in certain parts of the world, there was awful sorts of racism and homophobia, etc. Nowadays, it's completely unacceptable. So what's normal now in 50 years is going to be completely different. And in 50 years, following on from that. So it's so bizarre that we all get caught up in this idea of normality. But yeah, I feel like we need to step away from
nothing. there's nothing similar. There's nothing in the world that is the same. Like this hand is not the same as that hand. This foot is not the same as that foot. No person is the same. So like normal is not even normal. It's just a language that doesn't even describe anything. It's actually absurd and mad. Even language doesn't describe anything. Like what's consciousness, what's present moment. It's beyond words and intellect. But yeah, we're gone well off the topic, but definitely uh I think, yeah, we talk a great talk about, mental health and disabilities, and I've seen it firsthand. These people are not treated as well as they should be. So that kind of tells me, and I've got friends that, in wheelchairs and blah blah, like pubs in Ireland not having accommodation for people in wheelchairs, toilets, and we're in the draconial years with that as well. Even the rail service over here, you have to book in advance to get on the train if you're in a wheelchair. Oh, I could tell you lots of stories. I've been out on community outings with brain injury patients in the hospital, and the conversations and the nearly, I don't get into arguments with people, the arguments with people, I've asked them, like, we blocked off areas, and they were like, I'm sitting there and so I work in a hospital, here's my badge, I work with brain injury rehab, blah, blah, blah. I'll decide when they get here whether I'm going to get up or not. And I was like, I just told you, like, you have a brain injury, sensitive to sound, blah, blah, blah. Explain. I says, it might be difficult. You mightn't see it because they look very like you and I.
Yeah,
And she's like, I'll make that decision when they get here. I've never had to get up and move from a concert before, and it's a free concert. You can sit where you want. We're in 2020 and people are saying those things. So
well, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe there is some way to go, but just, for example, as I've mentioned earlier, the content that you create, the content that I'm hoping to create, hopefully goes some way to changing that, however small. If I don't mind, can we move on to your book, From My Head to My Heart? What was the process of writing that?
see, this is the thing. And someone says to me, oh, fair play to you writing a book. And I says, look, I'm not like Ian Blight. I didn't go off up into the mountains and take 3 months off and work and not talk to my family.
Yeah.
It's like somebody saying, you ran a marathon. Well, I've been training for 6 months. Like this book over here, I had wrote all these bits of poetry, and I wrote all my quotes, and I wrote all my mental health tips and blah, blah. And I just brought them all together. Then I put a backstory, and then it all kind of came together. I was listening to like, as I said to you, I started off in the counseling. I've done some reading. I've done some this, done some that, mind, body, and soul, mind, body, and soul. And then I've done some holotropic breath work. And that took me from my head to my heart, from an unconscious level. It brought me down into my heart, because I was, I talk about in the book, I highly intellectual, as in I read loads. I'm a scavenger for information and knowledge, and looking for the answer and the cures and blah blah blah.
Yes.
Where all of a sudden, all of it, little to know, the answer we're here in my chest is called my heart.
Yeah.
I was feeling. I was thinking about love. I was talking about love. I was talking about forgiveness. I was talking about grief, sadness, but I wasn't feeling any of it. And it was through the holotropic. It was through interviews. I listened to, Brené Brown, and they talk about how you move from your head to your heart. I was like, what? Hold on a second. That's what the podcast helped me do. That's what the holotropic done. That's how I moved from my head to my heart. From, I had to start with my head and then move in. And when I talk about this in the book, my counselor says to me, about doing psychotherapy. I was thinking of doing another degree. And she says, yeah, I think that's something that you would be good at. And I was like, yeah, I think I would. I smashed my sports science degree. Yeah, really, blah, blah, arrogantly said that. And she said, I think you might have difficulty. I says, what do you mean? Real defensive. I said, what do you mean?
Yeah.
She was like, well, you don't stay too long in feelings. I says, what? I says, I've been here with you nearly 5 or 6 years, and all we do is talk about feelings. She was like, yeah, Matt, that's it, talking about feelings. I was like, oh, fuck. Yeah, I've not been feeling them. And she's like, no, you haven't. You don't sit down here. I was like, fuck. I have to go back and do a bit more digging.
For real. Gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
I've always thought about that. For ages, realized that I was thinking a lot about improving. I'd always have these thoughts about it, but the feelings would never match. So it's almost not necessarily redundant, but it has nowhere near the same emotional impact. Where if I'm in a stressful situation, I'll go think happy, but I'm only thinking happy. The feeling of stress is still here, and it's just my brain.
Knowing and doing. It's getting that link between the knowing and doing.
I mean, no, you think knowledge is power is obviously, a well-known quote. It's power, but you also need to apply. to actually do what you know, and then that's when the improvement is going to come. And I'm still learning that myself. I mean, I've got quite a way to go, but making a
Me
start
too.
is the key. Yeah, I
Me
think
too.
yeah, I don't think you ever get to this point where it's like this golden paradise where you know everything and life is completely mapped out. I think everyone, no matter how perfect they look, no one has it together.
Here's the thing. This was a great learning for me, Connor, and I'll share this with you. I was on the holotropic breathwork. I don't know if you're familiar with holotropic breathwork, but the people that were on the course, and this is very telling, the people that are on the course, people that are doing it's a breath work, you know, you breathe and it changes your alters your state of consciousness. Like if it's Stan Groff started years ago, you know, he used to introduce LSD and then LSD got banned. So he brought in this breath work system and the music, provocative music, and brings you into this altered state of consciousness. And it brings you down into the subconscious where you're stored, hurt, and opens up things for you. But the people are on the course, so there's about 15 people, and the people that are running the course, psychotherapists, psychoanalysis, psychologists, blah, blah, blah. These are all people, Connor, that have been doing the work for years. They're still at it. Like, you know, they're still chipping away. They're not looking to be cured, looking to be fixed. They're just doing the work in order to be the vessel of love, kindness, compassion, understanding, to help others to heal. Like, you know, I would always, and I have to be reminded by my psychological counseling and my spiritual leaders, you know, it's not a destination. There's no end. You know, this is about just being on the path, improving, getting to know yourself, and being just shedding layers that you didn't know. Like you know, like I was talking to someone last night about forgiveness. I want to be able to forgive, blah blah blah. Should we haven't even got to the part what really has you stuck. So how can you talk about the end piece
Yeah,
of forgiveness when you haven't got past the part that's stuck? I was like, for fuck's sake, how did I not know this?
yeah.
And that was beautiful.
No, I've learned the hard way about that myself. I always try, well, I say I always, I have done a few times, tried to jump to that next step, almost run before I can walk. I go, yeah, I've got it covered. What's covered? What's cured? There's almost no such thing. You're always going to be on this journey. There's no happy ever after. It's always a constant learning process. And up until the day you die, you're going to have to learn, which is why you never see really successful people rest on their laurels. Like you see some athletes, Federer, Bolt, Ronaldo, Tom Brady, we could go on. They never go, I've made it. They just keep going and still learn more. Sylvester Stallone, he still takes acting lessons. I could go on with examples, but people at the top of their game realize this. They realize there's no golden destination, no golden kingdom. They know that they keep
Yeah,
having to learn and learn and learn and learn and keep at it, keep chipping away, keep sharpening the saw.
yeah. I love it. I love it. And that's it, Connor. Like even writing the book or doing the podcast, like people say, no, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And I'm like, I shrug my shoulders and I don't mean to be flippant and don't mean to minimize, blah, blah, blah. I said it's not. It's just it's a book and it's my story. Yeah, I'm just sharing it. It's not a big deal. I don't get over it's a big deal. It's just I'm just gonna just keep. It's another step on the journey. It's lovely. It's healing for me. It's healing for other people. But you know, we just move on to something else. It's great now, and then
Yeah,
we'll just move on to something else, and yeah, and it's always just learning and learning. Now, don't get me wrong, I began to raise my ego a little bit before Christmas. I was doing a course. I was, you
yeah,
know, creating Magic Minds, Mind You Little Course, blah, 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 blah. And I was getting driven by my ego, driven. And I was told then by a few people, you're talking the talk, you're not walking the walk, you're not minding your little self.
right, yeah,
So that just brought me back down. And
yeah,
that was lovely. That was humbling. And I'm in a state of this is the first interview I've done in a while now because I've
yeah,
cancelled all my programs, cancelled all my stuff. I was even him and Han about doing this. Like, but I like you and I like what you do. I was like, no, this is the right time to do this. Yeah, but we have to just stay humble, stay on our journey,
yeah, of
and
course.
just be a student. You know, there was a part of me that felt like he had it sorted,
Yeah,
but the universe just gives you a kick in the Lee roadies. That's Irish for balls, by the
yeah,
way.
I see. Yeah, learn something new every day. You see, this is why it's important to learn. I can use that
Yeah,
that's here in Vietnam. What's the word again? No? What word?
Lee roadies.
Roadies. Okay, I'll use that in Vietnam and see if the locals get it. Yeah, yeah, they do. But yeah. So regarding your book, I believe a chap called Geoff Thompson wrote the foreword. You've interviewed him as well on your podcast. I found him to be one of the most fascinating people I've ever heard from. I listened to him on London Real on my way to work about 6 months ago, And I was just astonished that a previous doorman from Coventry, who worked on a factory floor, hence one of his book titles, has so much wisdom, so much knowledge, so much kindness, so much compassion. I believe you've spoken to Geoff. Well, you have for him to write the foreword to your book. Can you tell me more about him and the impact he's had on you?
Oh, I talk about gifts in the book. I talk about gifts in life. I talk about God giving us gifts. He was a gift to me. Like, he came at an amazing time. He's a mentor of mine now. Like, he's just a phenomenal human being. He speaks truth. And that interview, Connor, that you talk about, I was driving, that was sent to me by another special person in my life, this girl that I met on social media. I worked for her husband on a show, on an interview, and we became friends. And she sent it to me, and I didn't listen to it. And a week later, I put it on, day before I was going to start one of the Mind Yourself little programs, and I was going to talk about my own sexual abuse. And I started listening to that interview, and just at the very start, he talks about being sexually abused, and I burst into tears. And I listened to it for a bit, and then I knocked it off. I was like, fuck him, what does he know? Fuck, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Push back. But then I put it back on. And he's just phenomenal. He just speaks on the heart. He speaks truth. It's pure. It's divine timing, and it's connected to source. He is the vessel of the message. And I was like, wow. And I've listened to many of his interviews. I've read many of his books. I just finished the Divine CEO. I listened to Watch Your Back. If you have Audible books and you use Audible, get on it. It's fucking brilliant. I listened to it as a doorman. Actually, don't. I was embarrassed to say I was a doorman after listening to the shit that went on there.
Yeah.
I was just a lollipop stick in a job. And I talk with this in my book. I spent 15 or so many years as a doorman shitting. I wasn't a real doorman. I just put on a suit and just acted my way through and talked and ducked by it. I'm not into violence at all. I was just a waffler. But he's just about truth. Even that book, The Divine CEO, it just asks you, if you're on this journey, if you're doing the work, you want to be connected to source and the divine CEO, you have to mend your ways. You have to do what you say. You have to be pure. You have to be honest. You have to be by the book. And he's just like the Dumb and Dumber, lawyer. Oh no, what's his name? Jim Carrey, lawyer.
Yeah.
This book's, you can't tell lies. It made me reflect upon myself. Makes you, keeps you honest, and he's a phenomenal human being. And as you say, he wrote the foreword, and I was just enamored. Do you know what I was actually enamored with? I was actually taken very back when we done the interview. We chatted, and I said, "What's the one thing you'd like to say before we leave? What's the one thing you'd like to share before you leave?" Just be kind. All the books, all the work he's did, just be kind. And it's so simplistic. We're so powerful, and it's beautiful, isn't it? He's a great guy.
Yeah, for real. There was that bit towards the end of his London Real interview, and he said it on many others as well, where he meets the man who abused him all these years later in a restaurant, and he's shaking with fear because he's brought back to that traumatic event when he was 11 years old. Because it's a man he completely idolized, his martial arts, and he completely forgives him. Where he goes up to him and says, "You're the man who sexually abused me. I forgive you." Gives him his hand, and the man's clearly shook. And you think, and upon listening to that, I thought, wow, I've held some grudges in my life, but there's been nothing anywhere near as harsh, as brutal as that. And if he can find kindness and put it onto that man instead of resentment, he could have easily been completely consumed by this resentment for what the man did to him. Yeah, if he can find kindness and compassion towards him and forgive him and let it go, which is the key. In my own life, I can look at that and think, I need to let things go. I need to really live with kindness and compassion as one of my values. Because if he can do that, it almost inspires me. And I'm sure many, many others, maybe including yourself, who've listened to him, to also go that way.
And that's something I've been practicing and working on over the last number of years, was that forgiving people that have done things to me. And I have got no more poison. I've no more resentment. I've got no more bitterness. I don't wish anyone well. I've got compassion, because I truly, truly believe, Connor, if you have hurt somebody, if you've done something to hurt someone else, the chances are you have been hurt yourself. So you have acted out of an unconscious place. So they have done stuff that I have done. I'm not pure. I've done bad things in my life. So I can't cast a stone because I have not been pure all my life. So I have to say they've been hurt. So as a human, I feel compassion and empathy and love for them. Like even my abuser, even the people that have done so to me, I have compassion in my heart. I have empathy for them. I just haven't got to the place where I'm comfortable with it, and that's all I'm working on. But I don't wish them well or wish them harm or evil on them or anything like that. I feel compassion for them, and that took a long time to do, but it's fucking powerful. It's great to actually to not want to drive your car through their head or want to mow them down right like that.
Yeah.
That's all gone. I don't hold grudges with people anymore. I just holding grudges is drinking the poison that you want to give to that person, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, I think I heard a quote one, maybe there might be a celebrity attached to it, but I think it's drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And
yeah,
not,
that's it. That's what I was. That's what I'm trying to say. I just heard
right,
this.
yeah.
So it's drinking a person and hoping that they'll die. Isn't that right?
Yeah, yeah, I believe so. And then when I heard that, I thought, gosh, yeah, because the only person you're really hurting is yourself, because you're going back to feelings we were talking earlier. You're holding feelings of guilt, resentment, and they're only going to linger, and they're not going to go onto that person. It's literally just inside you. And how are you going to get rid of that? Kindness and compassion. Very simple,
Yeah.
but back to basics is key.
For yourself, though, this is the thing. When people go like, when I used to always talk about kindness, compassion, blah blah, blah, and I threw it out at an intellectual level.
Yeah,
Then it was only when doing the work with Maggie when she said to me, "You work in the hospital and you're really compassionate to all these patients, blah blah. Why aren't you compassionate to yourself?" And straight away I was like, "Are you saying I'm not real? Are you saying I'm fake towards these patients?" She says, "I don't know. Are you?" So I went away for a week and I had to think about that. I went, no, I really am patient. I care about them and I worry about them and I blah, blah, blah. Why do I not do it to myself? And I realized I was just never shown. Like I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to love myself. What does that actually look like? Give that to me in a tangible thing. How do you do that?
yeah,
It's that stuff there when you're giving yourself a hard time about saying something to somebody, giving yourself a hard time when you're late for an event or you do something wrong, and you catch yourself and you say, hold on a second. You made a mistake. You got it wrong. You're allowed to make mistakes. You didn't know better. Blah, blah. That in itself, patience, understanding, compassion for yourself. Then you understand, that's what they mean by doing all this.
yeah,
This is how I practice kindness to myself, not give myself a hard time, not put myself down because I didn't know how to do something, blah, blah, blah. Like making mistakes on the podcast, saying the wrong thing to someone. Back to my why. Why did I do that? What was my spiritual intention? Did I mean to harm? Did I mean to make a mistake? No, you didn't. Then it's a mistake. What would you say to a little kid or a puppy? You'd say
yeah,
it's grand. No panic. It's all right. You do that for yourself. That's what they mean by giving yourself love and compassion. Why didn't someone tell me this years ago?
yeah.
Fucking have this now.
I learned that as a child. Yeah, as we were talking about earlier, when there's something that we're talking about, say, trying to get from here to here without addressing the place midway, that's almost I've found where I almost tried to help other people. Think, yeah, that will make me happy. But then, if I'm not doing that to myself, then I'm not creating that feeling for myself. I don't really understand what it is to be kind and compassionate because the one person who I spend the most time with, and we all do, is ourselves. So if we're not being kind to ourselves, of course you're not going to have the same impact as you are on somebody else. It's not selfish. I think that's some people think looking after yourself is possibly selfish. I think it's the most selfless thing you can do is to make sure you're completely in order before you try to help others, because that's the only way you can really have your full impact on the other people.
Of course. I truly believe that, Connor. When you are kind, compassionate, understanding, forgiving, patient with yourself, you can give it out. Like, look, you wake up in the day and you're not your Gucci best and you're feeling a little off. Are you truly present with that person? Are you truly in the here and now? You're probably miles away. When you're in your Gucci best, you're feeling great, you're there, you're present, you're open or you're closed, you're love or you're hate, you're bright or you're dark.
Yeah,
When
so
you're open, when you're love, when you're bright, you're a better human being. You're more attentive, you're more aware of what's going on. So that's just common sense. When you're not and you're giving yourself a hard time, you're going to give it to other people. If you're giving yourself and you're judging yourself, you're going to judge other people. And you hear people talking about other people and judging them, saying, state of her, the head on her,
yeah, yeah,
she's off, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure I'll put my money on it that they'll have a low opinion of themselves.
yeah,
You know,
precisely. As we were talking earlier, when people criticize you, taking unconventional methods. What has really helped me in the last few years is realizing that if somebody is critical of you, it's not actually personal. It's something that they're holding inside, which is self-critical of themselves. For example, when you're in a good mood and you're firing your future best, as you said, you don't think to criticize somebody else because you're in such a good state of mind and body that you don't want to ruin that by criticizing somebody else. And so if somebody says something to you like that, they're not right themselves, clearly, because they wouldn't have the energy to do that otherwise.
It's vibe, it's an energy, it's a,
Yeah,
your energy's high, they're back dark, light. They're in the low energy, negativity, blah blah blah. They're speaking from that. Where you're up here, you're vibrant, you're open, you're on a different frequency. We're talking about radios, like they do different channels. You have to come down and listen to this horrible noise.
yeah,
Up here,
yeah,
you're just open and vibrant. It's just about being aware of that, isn't it?
yeah,
And
sure.
here's the thing, man, when people criticize other people or they judge other people, we are all mirrors. Like what I like in you is something I like in me. I like you because you're inquisitive and you're open and you're honest and learning. Why do I like that? Because I think that's in me.
Yeah,
And if
sure.
you start doing something that I don't like, that's probably something in me that I don't like. So we're just
Yeah,
mirroring each other because that's why we resonate with people we like because they say or do or smell or look like stuff that we can connect to,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
people we don't, there's we're just reflections. We're what in here we see out there.
yeah, absolutely. It's
Crazy.
fascinating how it all works together. So if we talk, we've got the book that's now out. You are still
Yeah.
doing the podcast. What else have you got planned for the year ahead? Now we're in January. Is there anything else that you're gonna branch out into?
Yeah, no, I'm just taking it easy at the moment. I've still got the Magic Minds podcast, just interviewing away, just creating little videos. Just took a little step back just to gather my momentum, gather some energy.
Yeah,
I've
sure.
got the Mind Your Little Self programs that'll be kicking off again soon, and I'm just really pulling back and then just recharging my learning batteries. I'm just learning. I'm doing some pranayama course, and I maybe do some breath work course and reading some spiritual texts, and just really delving myself into just minding my little self. Tell people to be compassionate and kind, like what I did there. I was unaware that I wasn't possibly putting myself forth over the Christmas because of the book and all the stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Put on a crest of a wave, and I didn't know how much, because my family didn't understand how deeply impacted I was by my childhood. They didn't realize that most of was going on.
Right.
So that was me and my mom's relationship has changed for the better. It's just beautiful. So I'm just actually letting that digest. But yeah, Magic Minds will just keep plugging away. And yeah, you always stories that the power to inspire. I just want to be somebody that can help people or inspire people to heal their little selves
Yeah,
through love, kindness, compassion, understanding.
yeah, for real. So yeah, I think we've covered everything here, Matt. I'm going to wrap this up. But what I would like to say is, the reason I got in touch with you, I think it was around 4 or 5 months ago now. I don't know the exact date, but I'm going to guess. I saw the podcast you were doing. I listened first to the Geoff Thompson one that we spoke about earlier, who inspired me hugely, and I listened to snippets of the others and some in full. And I thought, wow, okay, this guy's inquisitive. This guy is on a journey. And the vibe, as we were talking about earlier, came across to me. So I'd like to thank you for the work you're doing. I completely admire it. And I'm going to be taking tips from what you're doing in the future when I try and build this podcast. I remember when we did our blog interview, we were talking about podcasts, and I thought, okay, this guy also was in a point where he didn't have the technical equipment. He didn't have the education behind podcasting, but he still just did it. You took action, you did it, and look where you are now. You've made your book, and there are future plans on the horizon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a leaf out of your book in a way, and hopefully use this to enhance my projects coming up in the next year. So thank you very much for that. I think this has been a great interview, and absolute pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted, Jasmine. Honestly, I'm not blowing smoke up your hole. I like you and I like your work you're doing, and you just
Yeah,
remind me, and somebody like myself just wants to achieve stuff, not from an ego point of view. You're really just genuine and authentically interested in knowledge. Like, and you just said there, and you've just, unbeknownst to yourself, so you went and done the knowing and the doing. Like, you didn't know how to start a podcast. You just went and started it. Like, you can't get this wrong. How can you get it wrong? You've never did it before. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So just give it a go, like, you know, and I just believe that this is the right time to do it. Now is the best time to start, even if you don't have the skills, but you have that want inside you. I want to do it, and that's once you have that, you can achieve anything. You'll find a way. Isn't that what they say? Water will find its level.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always find a way. So yeah,
Thank you very
thanks
much for having me on.
and all the best for the future. Thanks very much.
You, sir, here. A good man.